Good evening, it's 7 o'clock.
Not yet.
No, not yet? Hey, dzień dobry. Well, dobry dzień, I forgot what you did. Either way.
Action.
Action. Good evening, it's 7 o'clock here in New York City, and this is the Tibet Center Kunchaktar Dolinga Buddhist Meditation and Study Center under the direction of Chapche Lingwa Vishay. Tonight we have a very special guest, a warm, friendly, old friend of the Tibet Center, Simon Houlton, who's a graduate of IBD, the Institute for Buddhist Dialectics. He's a translator. He's working with Serkan Rinpoche and will be around the next month as Serkan Rinpoche is in the New York area. He's working on sharpening the translation of a book we're calling the 5 Lama Books. His Holiness Dalai Lama in 1991, prior to the Kala Chakra, designated 5 lamas, including a Bon Lama, to give a 2.5-hour talk, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the pinnacle of the scholars of the 20th century, as we close the 20th century. This is going to become a book. We recorded it, we transcribed it, and he's sharpening up the translations that were done on the fly. Yeah. Hopefully it'll come out at the end of the year or next year as a token of our 50th anniversary as a Tibet Center. So I'm very, very happy to welcome old friend Simon, good friend of Rinpoche, cheerful, a blessing to have him. Thanks for coming, Simon.
Okay, yeah. Greetings to everyone. It's lovely to be here, back in New York again, even for a short time. But happy to see everybody, old friends and faces, and a few new faces as well from Tibet Center. I guess I probably met Rinpoche something like 2004 in India. Something like that, I can't remember. He was giving oral transmissions of, I think like Satyagarbha Sutra, maybe some of those big sutras or something like that. I didn't know him really well at that time, but Stefan kind of invited me to go along with him, and that's kind of the first time. I think he got me to take a book to somebody. He called me over, and I remember him opening the door, and incredibly, I never heard him speak before, I think, and he said, "Take this book to Jimmy," I think it was. There's an old friend of mine in Dharamsala. So, and then since then, I sort of, one of my teachers, probably my sort of main teacher, you know, apart from how we would consider His Holiness to be our root guru that way, one of my main teachers was one of the Ganden Tripas, the 100th Ganden Tripa, and he passed away around, I think he passed away in 2008. He was a great master. He was in clear light meditation, I think, for 18 days. I went down there to see all that. That was quite something. And Rinpoche after that sort of took me a little bit under his wing in some way, and sort of filling in for me, I think, because that was my main teacher after he passed. So I think then after that was the time when I think it was about 2008, 2009, I became a little bit closer with Rinpoche. And as you all know, if you've had any contact with Rinpoche, it was very joyous and but also extremely profound, to spend time with someone like that So I feel greatly sort of privileged and honoured to have had some time. And when Rinpoche was at the last few years of his life, when he came to India and then got stuck with COVID, he lived in a hotel right next to my house, so I used to help out quite a lot. And that was, very intense and very magical time, sort of spending time with Rinpoche. So it's a great pleasure to be here. And following in Rinpoche, they used to call Rinpoche Six Bagel Ratto, I think, as one of his nicknames. So I've been staying with Mark, who's, and I've got to 1 bagel so far, so I don't consider myself only one a day.
Oh, right.
Yeah, only one a day. I really think Rinpoche ate 6 bagels a day. So I consider myself a poor student of Rinpoche to only be able to have 1 bagel a day. So I think what they've asked me to talk about today is a book that Tibet Centre is going to, if people haven't got a copy of this brochure, take one, because this is the original brochure from 1991.
You remember that?
Yeah.
He built them on the house.
Oh, did he? Okay, well, he knows it very well.
From plans from Durham South.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Pass one back there. There you go. And this is the original brochure, I think, isn't it?
It's from 1991.
Yeah,
It's
1991.
34 years old.
And
I remember the arguments putting it together.
right, it's a beautiful.
In your office, we did a lot of the work.
Yeah, okay. All right, there we go. So, His Holiness, I think, after the Tibet Centre and Rinpoche and Tibet Centre had invited His Holiness to come and give the Kala Chakra in New York, His Holiness chose to, as a kind of, not preliminary teaching, because I think His Holiness gave preliminary teachings on Shantadeva's Way of the Bodhisattva, but as a kind of preamble to that, he invited 5 sort of great masters of the different lineages of Tibetan Buddhism, including the Kagyu Sakya Nyingma Gyelu, and then also Bön, the sort of very pre-Buddhist culture and tradition. And he invited 5 of them to talk. Tony says they were to talk for 2 to 3 hours, something like that, and to give a presentation of their traditions, sort of paths of practice, the traditions of those particularly the unique features of each of those different traditions. So there were 5, as I said, and the Bön Lama was also included. So here you have Venerable Lobam Tenzin Namdak Rinpoche, who was the representative of Bön. And then for Nyingma, you had the incredible Nyingma master, Tushik Rinpoche, who died, I think, probably 7, 8 years, probably going back now, I think. I think his reincarnation is back. He was I think I met him once. He was an amazing master, as a direct, sort of almost like heart student of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, speaking on Nyingma and Dzogchen. And then Venerable Tenga Rinpoche, I'm not so familiar, but she spoke on Kagyu Ma Mudra, and he also spoke quite, because there are many lineages of Kagyu, and he spoke not in great detail, but about the different, some of the different lineages of Kagyu, Kama Kagyu, Dikun Kagyu, and then the master of course, Sakya-Trizin, who's still alive today, still very healthy, and he was in Dharamsala for His Holiness's birthday, on 90th birthday, speaking on Sakya tradition in general, but also on the Sakya Tantric sort of lineage of Lamdre, of paths and result. And then lastly, from the Gyelu tradition, the great master Lati Rinpoche, who is from Ganden, I think from Ganden Shadze, yeah, from Shadze. So they initially we had thought to, because it's billed on the thing as the path of compassion, which would probably more related to Shantideva, but then the nature of mind. So I don't know, of course we will never know what His Holiness instructed them to speak about, we will never know what that was, but it was kind of billed as the sort of nature of mind. But what you find in the teachings that they gave, and Mark was giving me a lot of help at the beginning to sort of really clean up. The files were recorded they were audio files, and then we transcribed them, sometimes using like AI tools also to transcribe them, and then we had to check all of that. Of course, it has to be checked off against the English. So Sakya-Trizin is the only one who spoke in English. The other 4 spoke in Tibetan, and then they had translators. So Sakya-Trizin one, of course, Tibetan Lamas speaking in English, directly in English, also have, a slightly quixotic way of speaking. They have their own mannerisms. And it's an oral teaching, so they tend to also, they can sort of repeat things, or go on a slight tangent, then come back to that tangent. So But I'll start. So psychiatry spoke in English. He was talking. Most of them didn't speak that much on the nature of mind. So we had this complication where we were wondering about whether it would be called the nature of mind.
That was the PR where they wanted something out there that was
hooked
that weren't Buddhists.
To draw people in, yeah. But sort of thinking about that, it would be, if someone was really interested in nature of mind, it's not actually discussed very much or very. There are small paragraphs about it in the Kaju master's teaching, Dengarum she's teaching. Then he speaks about this sort of the Kaju view of sort of luminosity and the sort of Umachembo, what they call Umachembo, the great Madhyamaka in the sort of Kaju Mahamudra tradition, and that that way. But the others, there isn't much in the, so that's one of the things that we've been contemplating about what it would actually be, how we would build it, because I think if people bought a book which they were hoping was talking about the nature of mind, they would find, what you find is that what all of the masters did is essentially go through the sequence of practices within each of their traditions, so that they're very unique. It's very interesting how the four Buddhist lamas are giving a presentation right from the sort of basic, probably almost like through the lens of the the scope of the three different beings of a lesser capacity, medium capacity, and greater capacity. So they're kind of doing like that. So first of all, talking about topics such as the suffering nature of samsara, and some of them do it in a very traditional sort of lam rim way of sort of starting with that, just wishing to have higher rebirth, and wishing to sort of middle scope being wishing to attain liberation, and then the sort of bodhisattva vehicle of sort of wishing to attain complete enlightenment. So some of them approach it in that way, but also they're talking about topics like a refuge and a death and impermanence, and things like the four immeasurables of love, compassion, sympathetic joy or empathetic joy, and equanimity, and then building your base out of that. So they all have a very, although they're essentially what they did is talk about what we would call the sutra practices and way of engagement of their tradition with kind of sutra, in the sutra kind of way, and then in the middle and latter part of their talks, they would explain their tantric, the ways in which their tradition approaches tantra, and to some extent things like their view of what it means to what the sort of selflessness means, or what emptiness means, or are kind of connected, which I might talk about in a bit in terms of kind of non-sectarian way of. I was taught in a non-sectarian way at the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, which I might explain a bit afterwards, because this is kind of non-sectarian, what we call rime. In Tibetan rime means like a side or a section or a part, and the me means none. So kind of that way of being unbiased. So this, I think, I would imagine that what His Holiness was doing is to presenting, getting these great masters to present their traditions in a really authentic way. These are the cream of the scholars and masters of each of those traditions, and then, but also giving people the idea, perhaps that that they're not incompatible, they're not separate things, which are,
Yes.
And in traditional Tibet, they could become, because of Tibet's geographical nature, with very remote areas, small valleys. You literally could have valleys where one group of people could hardly understand people speaking on the valley over the, it was so in some places very remote. So people tended to be slightly tribal. They were very, so you would get sort of people, you were born, the Zanskar nun who spoke down at the South Orange Centre on Saturday. Was it Saturday? Yeah, on Saturday. She was talking about her childhood and stuff, and she mentioned that in Zanskar they basically had Kaju and Gilu monasteries, but each monastery would basically be associated with a particular village or something like that, or perhaps if the village was large, a certain section might be associated with the Kaju monastery, and this was a very important cultural sort of function. So they were very, they could be quite separate in Tibet, and there could be occasionally animosity and competition and these things. So I think, and His Holiness has been pushing for years in terms of Tibetan unity, and in terms of not just a sort of secular way of unity amongst the community, but actually in terms of religious harmony as well, but also sort of this implication that these are saying the same thing. They're different traditions. They present their many of the basic teachings. They're not presenting that differently. So when you see in this sort of stages of the path sort of genre of you see it in like the jewel ornament of liberation, from Kaju from Gambopa, which is a Lamrim text essentially, but it's arranged in a different way. And then you have J. Rinpoche's, huge work, this great stages, the treatise on the great stages, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. It's a vast sort of treatise on, with this sort of Lamrim literature. They're presenting similar things. They draw on different sources, so they take sources from different sutras, or from sometimes quoting. For instance, Kaju would quote from Milarepa and Marpa, Gampopa, Dusum Gombo. So they're quoting through their tradition, or they take they have slightly different angles from the Indian Shastras or from the sutras, but you're getting a sort of refuge, death and impermanence, the suffering nature of samsara, the faults of samsara, the nature of suffering, and then the 12 links of dependent origination is sort of in these sequences of building up our more sophisticated kind of philosophy and more sophisticated levels of practice. So they're quite similar, following that kind of structure of the being of lower scope, middle scope, and the greater scope. But when you get to, and that can be quite similar, but for instance, what's it called? I forgot Patrul Rinpoche's Lamrim. What's it called? Words of My Perfect Teacher, which is in Tibetan is fantastic. It's like it's written in a really quite colloquial style. It's hard to describe. There's one point where he's describing. I think he was a committed vegetarian. I got the impression from his text, and he's describing someone sort of eating meat in the sort of So it's very evocative.
How does that go?
His whole style is very colloquial. So he sort of describes things like I remember one passage where he's talking about someone who's eating meat and the sort of fat is dripping down his jowls and all this kind. It's done in a very evocative kind of Tibetan language. It's very whereas Lama Tsongkhapa's writings are very clinical in a way. They're very precise, extremely precise. It's not that other people are not precise. I wouldn't suggest that for a moment, because they are extremely precise. But it's sort of J. Rinpoche has a kind of it's very
scholarly.
It's more it comes across in a more scholarly style. The Pabonka Rinpoche's Lamrim, that's liberation in the palm of your hand. that's also, it was a spoken teaching. I believe Rinpoche was at that teaching. I can't remember when it was, 1930 or something, the teaching.
39, 40 or so.
The teaching.
It tells you about, I forgot. Anyway, he was there, and Trijang Rinpoche wrote everything down.
That's right. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
Tarpa Latacha, they used to call it.
What's that?
Tarpa Latacha,
Tarpa.
liberation.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. The liberation in the palm of your hand. Which is also it's a spoken teaching, so it has a more colloquial style. J. Rinpoche's Great Stages of the Path is I mean, its beauty is in its precision and kind of, you can see exactly what J. Rinpoche wants to say, how he's going to say it. It's very precise. So they all have their styles, and perhaps one of the beauties of the different traditions is the way that they say things in a different way. So they just maybe, certainly in like sutra, I think you see that there are a lot of debates. A lot of debates around things like what it means to be empty. What does emptiness mean? There's huge debate between Kagyu, particularly between Kagyu, Nyingma, and a little bit Sakya, who have a particular view, and J. Rinpoche is seen as a kind of newcomer, where he brings up a kind of a slightly different take particularly on emptiness. His view of emptiness as being a non-affirming negative. It's just the refutation of true existence, and that's it. Is something that the other traditions don't like too much. They don't like the sound of it too much. So there's a lot of debate in these things. But these levels of sort of Lamrim and bodhicitta going up, they're quite, they have their own beauty, but they're similar. They're saying similar things. But when you start to move into the world of Tantra, then you're starting to really see that they have particular different focuses. So, for instance, the Kagyu tradition leading you wants to lead people into Mahamudra at some point. That's their, from the Sutra tradition into Tantric Mahamudra. They have a kind of Sutra Mahamudra and Tantric Mahamudra, and then in the Nyingma system, leading people into Dzogchen practice. So those underpinning philosophies draw in more of something which it's not a Chittamata view, it's not a mind-only view, it's as it is. It's what we would call Yogacara. So Yogacara, when we talk about the tenet systems, we usually say there's Vaibhashika, Sautantrika, Chittamata, and then Madhyamaka, as the four sort of tenet systems of Buddhism. But actually, and recently the Karmapa particularly has been speaking a lot about this, that the poor old mind-only Chittamata school is probably given a really bad rap or something. The people have taken certain things out of limited selections of texts and critiqued them but the Yogacara tradition is much vaster than that. The Chittamata is only a tiny part of Yogacara system. And the Indian master Shantarakshita, he combines Madhyamaka with Yogacara. He is a kind of blend of Madhyamaka and Yogacara. And then you find Kagyu and Nyingma taking more of their Madhyamaka view out of that, because they're thinking about, luminosity, the nature of mind being luminosity, the nature of reality, the nature of mind being luminosity, and same for Dzogchen, and that sort of nature of mind kind of meditation system is how they will then lead you on into, these much deeper levels of practice for Mahamudra, Great Seal, and for Dzogchen. That's I mean, there's sort of because Tibetan traditions are so, and this is why I think you see this thing where people say, Galupas are study and they don't know how to meditate, and Kagyu and Nyingma just meditate, but they don't know how to study. Which is total lunacy. Because in Galu system, they will say, yeah, okay, you have to, you study the Geshe program or something for 20, 25 years. So you build up a very good understanding of Prajnaparamita, but also from Madhyamaka. And of course they study these 5 great genres of literature, which is sort of the Prajnaparamita, perfection of wisdom. Then the Madhyamaka, to give you the view. The Prajnaparamita is a lot to do with the paths, the grounds, some of those basic building blocks. It also includes things like 12 links, the form and formless realms, and all this kind of basic sort of, what we call it, like architecture. And then Madhyamaka brings in that view, studying Chandrakirti. Everybody studies Chandrakirti's entering the middle way, Madhyamaka Vatara. And then you have the Vinaya as the monastic rules of conduct to sort of help you to orientate yourself morally. And then Pramana, which is, perhaps logic and epistemology from the Dharmakirti and Dignag and Dharmakirti, these Indian masters of logic and philosophy, to give you the sort of logical underpinning to then be able to analyze these teachings and texts properly. And then what's left? Abhidharma, which is so really that's like even more of a basic building block. Actually, it talks about karma. The best descriptions of karma are found in Abhidharma. All of the traditions tend to study these things. Gelupa is definitely studying much more, so you'll get this presentation of. But the ideal Gelupa practitioner is someone who studies for 20 or 25 years and then goes into the mountains. They go to Tantric college, they study the rituals and practices of mainly the 3 deities of Yamantaka, Chakrasambhara and Guya Samaja. And then the ideal for a Gelupa is to go up in the mountains and meditate on Guya Samaja, or probably mostly they do Guya Samaja practice for, in the cave. So this idea that, somehow Gelupas just study and Kajus and Nyingmas just meditate and there's nothing in between is crazy. And I was also telling a story to Mark about, I studied in the dialectic school. We study all the 4 schools, Kaju, Sakya, Nyingma, Gelu. So we would go to a Kaju monastery. We went to Sherabling, Palpung Sherabling, which is Taisatu and Mingya Rinpoche's base in India. Of course, it was the base in Tibet, but it's rebuilt near Dharamsala. And we stayed there with my classmates for 3 months and debated with the Kaju monks on their terms, so to speak. So we became because we'd studied quite a lot of Gelu and we understood J. Rinpoche's view quite well, we became like the representatives somehow of J. Rinpoche, and we would stand up for J. Rinpoche, and they would have their, Kaju views. This is mostly on Madhyamaka, because it's a lot of debate. And we would thrash it out, which was the most incredible experience, because everybody started to realize that the things they were told about the other tradition weren't quite true. It was very, people were sort of going, try to trap you in debate and think they trapped you, and we would say some answer to get. Both parties would say, and then people were just kind of scratching their head. You're not allowed to say that's not your answer, and because people had not understood each other well. So I think that what His Holiness was doing here is getting people to understand each of the traditions. Not, for Westerners it's good to understand also, but for the Tibetan also to start to understand the different traditions and to sort of integrate with each other. Because once you figure out that the philosophy, you're told a sort of basic version of that philosophy, which is much more sophisticated than you first imagined, it immediately builds respect. Because you understand, and you start to see, and that was my experience, you start to see that we're basically saying the same thing. Because there's a tendency to think that, I don't know, and that at that level of Madhyamaka, I think it's true. It gets a bit more complicated with Tantra, because in Tantra, as I say, they're using different... they're not going to... Kagyu and Nyingma are not going to use J. Rinpoche's idea of, what do we call it, the non-affirming negative, that it's only the mere refutation of true existence, which is emptiness. So, this table lacking true existence, this table, that's the emptiness of the table for J. Rinpoche. The Kagyu and Nyingma talk about this going beyond the four extremes, with the four extremes of existence, non-existence, both and neither. So they talk about that, which means that they feel that that's a deeper level of reality. And that level of reality is the one they want to use to then, as a building block, which then takes you onto your Mahamudra Dzogchen, and to some extent to Sakya Lamdre, the paths and results. So the experience of sort of debating with those things is when we stayed in Sherabling for 3 months with the Kagyu monks, and after the initial kind of skirmish, where everyone was a bit sort of like, thought they were going to easily prove the other people wrong, and it was all, it's very light-hearted. Debate is light-hearted, and but there's a lot of teasing. It's Tibetan society. There's a lot of teasing, but then suddenly there was a huge amount of respect that was built up. And when we left Sherabling, the Gekku, the discipline master and sort of administrator and discipline master, nearly cried and said, "Thank you for coming and not explaining, but thank you for revealing to our monks what J. Rinpoche's view really is." Because I was saying to Mark on the train, if you talk about being non-sectarian, let's say in the Tibetan Buddhist world, if you talk about being non-sectarian, you cannot be non-sectarian unless you understand what the other people are saying. It's just not possible. You have to have some good idea of what. That's in my opinion. It does, at the basic level, you can talk about having respect, study your tradition, practice your tradition, and have respect, which is totally fine. But to really have respect, you have to know how impressive that system is. So you have to, it's very helpful to, at the beginning, have respect. For, as His Holiness will say, for all religious traditions, you should have respect. But it's sort of, I think that this is part of His Holiness's way to really sort of get people to, inside Tibet, and inside Tibetan community, but also to see the sort of, the beauty of how they're kind of saying the same thing, but the beauty lies in the different ways that people say the same thing, or kind of similar things, the flavour.
Remember the idea of nature of mind, of course, the artists sell tickets, but the idea was certain students might be attracted to this presentation of that.
Right.
So there was casting a wide net.
Yeah. And it's very inclusive then, because it's
Out of his pen.
Yes.
You pick them all, you lecture them all. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And it's a huge event. I mean, it was a big event for...
right over here, remember?
Right. Yeah, so it's round the clock. So it's a huge event. So to have all the traditions there to represent them. So it's been it's very interesting. Of course, the complications in terms of the material. For instance, the four teachers who speak in Tibetan are. They all have very strong accents, most of them. And the translation is done live. So, as a translator myself, I know that when translation is done live, you will always miss things. There's no translator in Tibetan Jimba, there's no translator that gets it all when they're doing live translation. So and then of course each translator is using different language for the same thing. mental afflictions or negative emotions, or they're all using. So this is one of the challenges.
Klesha, yeah.
This is a big klesha for klesha, yeah. So this is one of the complications is, do we standardize all of that? Because otherwise, in some of the more technical language, it'll be difficult to figure out that they're actually using the same word in Tibetan.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Do all the lineages have the framework of the 5 topics, the 5 subjects in their curriculum?
Well, that's not so much, no. But essentially yes, but not manifestly. Yeah, because for instance, the Nyingma Kaju. So having what we call, studying in that way, on a kind of sutra level in that way, would be done in a monastery in what's called a shedra. And they had what's it called? Gondra. It's not Gondra. So they'd have different sections of the monastery. So particularly in when we were in Sherabling, they have a section for those who are meditating. I can't remember what's it called, Gondra, Gomde. And then that would be a separate section in the monastery in Tibet, and now in exile. It's away from the main Gompas, because they live there in retreat, doing 3 months, 3 day retreat,
Does it
11. Yeah, there's more. Yeah, let's say with that. Yeah, Sherabling is a Karma Kaju monastery. It's a good example. But then they had, and in Tibet they would have probably, and then they have the Sokang, the sort of main meeting hall or something, and that's where all the pujas go on, and prayers and rituals, probably teachings, that kind of thing. And then you have the Shedra, and the Shedra is where you study. So often through the medium of debate, but also there are other sort of ways that they studied. But those Shedras for Kaju Nyingma particularly were not so common, going back 100 years or something like that. It's a more recent phenomenon. For instance, in the Nyingma tradition, they didn't have a sort of collection of commentaries discussing. They had texts on Madhyamaka. In Kaju they had Ranjun Yeshe and Miku Dorje and Ranjun Dorje, all writing on subjects like Chandrakirti and Madhyamaka. But they didn't have any sort of curricular texts. There were commentaries by the great masters, but they didn't have these like textbooks for a college to use to study these texts, until you get to 18th, 19th century with Mipam Rinpoche in Nyingma, and he is starting to say, I think it was probably not a power thing, but the Galus were becoming very influential with this, study, and they were building big monasteries for study, or had already built, big monasteries for study, and I think the Nyingmas and Kaju's system probably recognised this a bit. We need to catch up a bit with this. So you see the emergence of these Shedras, and then he writes the kind of textbooks for some of the great texts. But they have a system of 13 texts, which include things like Shantideva, the illuminating Madhyamaka, Umagen, the ornament of Madhyamaka from illumination. Yeah, they have these. They study Shantrakshita and Kamalashila, and so they say that they have a sort of greater series of texts, and probably is not done so much through the medium of philosophical debate. They also do this thing where you read the text and then they call on a student randomly at the start of the day and say, by lunchtime you have to present what we did this week or something like that. So they have sort of these they do some debate. But the Galus were really focused on, I don't know, people must have seen in the big monasteries of South India, thousands of monks debating on the debate courtyard, this thing, that's that's how I was taught in dialectic school. We did philosophical debate. You had a class, and then you had to do memorization, and then you would take that to and you had to make up debates, and then you had to go to the courtyard and debate that. So they're a little bit they're a little bit newer systems, you know. The Galus had been using that process for since 16th century, 15th, 16th century, 16th century really. And they have developed a series of textbooks. Our textbooks for Galu were from 17th century, I think. Pension for Drapung is Pension Samudra, Pension Samudra.
It's young in the Tibetan tradition.
What's that?
It's young.
It's young, yeah. So we use, or they used to use the textbooks of the fifth Dalai Lama. He wrote a whole series on Prajnaparamita, on Madhyamaka, on Pramana. They're like manuals, because, for instance, for Prajnaparamita, what they study is Abhisamaya Alankara, ornament of clear realization. But it's a totally dense text. I mean, we had to memorize it. It's like it's got 3 syllables next to each other, and it's literally like a short form of everything. So there's no way you can't just read Ornament of Clear Realization, on a Sunday afternoon in your back garden and hope to pick up much from it. Because it's totally dense. I mean, it's literally, sometimes it's literally one syllable. We studied the first verse for a year on that text.
You're slow learner.
That's right. Yes, slightly dim. But they love to unravel these. They have one syllable and it pours out into the whole presentation of the path or something. So it's super dense. So you have to have a commentary, and then you would get the Indian commentaries. The Indian masters' commentaries on these texts, and then you would get the Tibetan. So you're coming at it through a layer of like 2 or 3 layers, and then you would, that has like how to debate. Or if he says, this, sort of, they're like manuals, debate manuals or something like that.
You had a taste of that from the religious. It's a little further, and then he went on.
Yeah.
He's a geshe, even though he's carving.
Yeah, Trungpa Rinpoche was again. Yeah, and that's an extremely good example. Trungpa Rinpoche is a great modern example of a Rime master who went and studied. He studied with. He was a good Kaju. Yeah, he's from Kaju lineage, but went and studied and did a geshe degree in the Gelugpa monasteries after he was a great Kaju master. The Rampa Geshe was in the Rampa Geshe, so that meant he spent at least 20 years, and probably more. So he went and found out what these other people are saying, right? Rather than having some second-hand report of what they do say, and so he really he developed that sort of profound respect for the other tradition and really profound understanding. And one of the things that His Holiness says about, I don't know which way around it goes, but he says, my practice of Gelu Guru Samaja practice has been revolutionized by my study and practice of Dzogchen. So that this way in which these practices are sort of enhance each other. So the beauty of having these traditions together and authentic lineage lamas giving you really the sort of the really pith version of it, but there isn't so much about nature of mind, but it's a fascinating sort of document of the way that these masters see their tradition and how to present it. Both in sutra, but a little bit. There's not super great detail in tantra in there, but there is enough of it. So it's a little. There are a few sort of. They're not complications, but there are a few things. There are a few sort of things that have needed to be worked out in doing that. You have to I have to retranslate the Tibetan bits, and combine that with what was said by the translator, and then retranslates them. There's quite a lot of that.
Take your time.
No, I've taken enough time already.
No. This is, first of all, everyone has the book now. Reading's a good introduction. That was His Holiness's idea, to make it sectarian and also attract those who have no religion. So he was on top of it the whole time, through children of the shade.
Yeah.
So a lot of work was done. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
All the cursing and everything we didn't know. We have to get some benefit out of it. You know how it is when a project comes in, deadlines, so.
Yeah.
We had a good time. In retrospect, not then, but in retrospect.
Yeah, I imagine it was quite tough. Yeah.
It's a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I mean, in terms of that, we were in the dialectic school. We had taught. Well, I was taught by a teacher who was from an Nyingma family, but ended up. It's one of Mark's teachers now. From he was a student. He was a student of the dialectic school, but he had a very strong yearning to practice the Dharma, and came from a Nyingma family, and he started studying. His name is Gentin Zingirme. He started studying a little bit IBD, and he was like, "What's all this stuff?" You know, when you start debating, you start talking about comparing colours and all these sort of very simple, they're simple topics to teach you how to develop relationships between phenomena, like what's the difference between a colour and red, and it's actually quite simple algebra and set theory, but for Tibetan monks who haven't had a secular education, it's quite complicated to understand. And he was getting sort of bored with this kind of overly dialectical thing, and he went to one of the great, I think it was Minderling Rinpoche or someone, and before he even got in the door, I think it was Minderling Rinpoche said to him, if you don't understand the topic, how are you going to meditate on it? And sent him straight back to the dialectic school, and he went through that. But he still, he was, and he taught us in a way of. We studied the Galu text, but we also would debate. He would debate in the class with Sakya from Gorampa, especially Gorampa was a great opponent of Jerimshi in Madhyamaka, and from Migyu Dorje's Kaju. And it was this sort of fascinating. He said, right, Rime means read them all, figure out what each one of them says, and then you take your own position. Not take the position of what it says in the textbook. You stand in the middle. You take responsibility for a particular way of thinking yourself. You say, out of all these views, I like this view the most. And then you let people confront you with reason. And and when you come to the understanding that this reason is not working, you put up your hands, give it up, change your thesis, and move on. So it's this that's how he taught us. He said, you take responsibility, don't, maybe J. Rinpoche is not right, who knows.
And then Minderling was a Nyingma teacher.
He was a Nyingma teacher also, and sent him back. Yeah, I think it was Mindra. I think I sometimes get that story wrong. But he was sent, he was sort of like, if you don't know what you're talking about, how are you going to, or you don't really understand the topic well, how are you going to meditate on it? It's essential.
Your school was renamed. You have non-Buddhists there, right?
No. We would have
non-ordained.
Oh yeah, we have. Yeah.
You're not ordained.
No. There was the one place.
Male and female.
They had male and female. They had male and female, both lay students and monastics. So, and we studied 3 months in the higher years. We studied Paramita and Madhyamaka for 7 years and 3 years. That's 10 years, and then in these Abhidharma classes we studied. We went to Sherabling for Kaju. We went to Songsa Kyatso Rinpoche's Kshetra near Beer, near Dharamsala for Sakya, and they sent a Nyingma Kempo from Namdrling in the south, and so we studied their systems, the great mostly Madhyamaka. It was mostly about Madhyamaka to get the view, because that's where you do see the big differences in the presentation of the words. There's quite a lot of difference, and there's quite a lot of critique of each other. So we had this real sort of exposure to that way of, and it is so beautiful because it's like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an analogy, but if you read something from another side, I don't know, maybe you love French poetry or something, and then you read a couple of commentators on a particular poem, and one person says, no, it's all about this, and another person, and if you're open-minded, you can really see you go, oh, I never thought of it like that, and that beauty is a way of opening you up, right? It's not, we can be a bit limited sometimes. We get stuck in it. So a real beauty it's like weaving a kind of fabric together, and it really, reveals sometimes these sort of deeper points, which when you're studying particularly, you can get stuck in a particular way, and it's very, it's like anything in life. If you look at something from another perspective, you can learn so much about, rather than we get shut down and we don't want to, this is how it is. And it makes you very open. And you really appreciate others. They really like, oh wow, that's like, we really appreciate these. We don't have to necessarily agree with it all, but you can see the profundity and beauty of those systems. So I think that's, and that's definitely what is, His Holiness is, certainly for inside the Tibetan world of Buddhism, because there have been sort of sectarian problems, and we had the he who shall not be named, the Dorji Shugden problem, which was very, very sectarian, because it was completely focused on Galup. It was, a very strong identity with Galupa and the other systems being degenerate. So created a lot of conflict and problems inside the Tibetan community. So this way, I think, is really, as well as being, it's very profound to give us an example in many ways about how to do things, to that sort of integration of what on the surface may seem to be disparate elements into something which is cohesive. Is a very, very beautiful thing, I think.
This is a good introduction. When the book comes out, it'll be in that. No, I'm serious, but for people now,
yeah, this is
it's a good idea. At least you have a gestalt, nobody uses that word anymore, but a framework, a grid, to put this here and that there, and then you can see.
Do you have a
Go ahead,
Do you have a publisher?
No.
Don't worry about that. We're going to take it down. No, for the student that's going to look, it'll be around. It's not going to be lost. In other words, these tapes were laying in my basement for a couple of years. And Mark was helpful. He decided to modernize it. This was the old floppy.
He did, yeah, he does. Mark was.
Maya typed everything out from a recording. I paid her $50 for every talk, and she gave it right back to the center. She did not take a dime.
Ah, beautiful.
That started from floppy disk. The floppy disk is useless. Mark redigitized it into the modern world.
From the translation, yeah.
To today.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have two questions. So in the beginning, you talked about a little bit about tenets.
Yeah.
And so my understanding is, because I study only Gil.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem.
It's really interesting for me.
Yeah.
That I thought all the Tibetan Buddhism was following the Madhyamaka Prasangika philosophy, but you mentioned they are, but they aren't.
Yeah.
Can you clarify that?
Yeah. So the problem of that comes from the way that the fact that in the Galupa system, the two Madhyamaka schools of autonomous Madhyamaka or Svatantrika Prasangika and Svatantrika Madhyamaka and then the Prasangika Madhyamaka are considered to be hierarchical. So if you debate it hard, you can't get enlightened with Svatantrika Madhyamaka view, because there's still they're going to say it's Svatantra Madhyamaka view is that sort of what we call 50-50, right?
They don't negate.
They don't, yeah, from Prasangika, so when we talk about these things, which is something I've sort of tried to encourage students to do, we have to think, people say, oh, it's Prasangika, but Prasangika for someone who's coming from Kaju perspective, and Prasangika from someone from Gelu perspective is slightly different. So we actually have to locate it in Jay Rinpoche says this about Prasangika. Migyu Dorji says this about Prasangika. This is the way you have to locate it. Yeah. So they in Gelu they are hierarchical, right? So Svatantra Madhyamaka view, you're still clinging on to something. You're not clinging on to true existence.
Conventional.
Yeah, and you're not clinging on to things. You are clinging on to things exist from their own side, but they're empty of true existence. Right? So then, for them, true existence and inherent existence are not the same thing. If that's,
But that's, we think it's the same.
but Kaju and Nyingma say that those two schools are not different in their subtlety of their view. They're different in the way that they access that information, that reality. So Svatantra Madhyamaka accesses it through using autonomous syllogisms, what they call autonomous syllogisms. So they use syllogistic logic to get to that truth, whereas Prasangika uses only the consequential arguments, right? So they're saying there's no difference in the view, but people like Kamalashila and Shantarakshita came at it using what they say. I mean, there's a lot of debate in this and a lot of subtlety. But for Kaju and Nyingma, the two Madhyamaka schools are the same view. They're not considered higher or lower because of the view, but because of the way that you access that view. Whereas for Rinpoche, Svatantra Madhyamaka view is still got something wrong with it. You're still hanging on. You don't quite want to let go of all of it.
Yeah, that's what Nikki presents.
Oh, okay, right.
There's still something.
There's still something there.
They still arrive at the same truth when they speak, and it seems like it.
Yeah.
They do arrive at the same meditative experiences.
Well, that's the $1 million question.
You
Yeah.
can't say you got it.
Yeah. That's right.
The easiest way.
That's right.
Another question, also because I study only
Yeah.
Christian, I hear all the time that there's a big debate about emphasis, non-affirming negation,
Yeah.
or affirming negation.
Yeah.
I hear that there's a debate,
Mm.
but I never hear the other side
Yeah.
that's proving that it's affirming negation. And you mentioned a little bit, and His Holiness said, I believe on non-affirming negation.
He does say that a lot. Yeah.
But I never hear the other side
Mm.
in Gelu class.
Yeah, from the other side. Yeah.
And you just mentioned something, can you elaborate this?
So that's
The other side?
yeah, the other side of the coin. So yeah, so the non-affirming negation is the idea that you take a phenomena and analyze it, like my glasses, and based on your analysis, I think it has to be a little bit more subtle than I can't find my glasses in my glasses. I can't find my glasses in the end of here, in the glass and the thing. Because if you go and ask a cow farmer, is the tail of your cow the cow? He's going to look at you like you're mad. It's like, of course the tail of the cow is not the cow. Of course the eye of the cow is not the cow. So actually, even for Gelu, you have to have a more subtle analysis where you say, is the tail of the cow inherently one with the cow or inherently separate from the cow? That's the argument, actually, not that the tail of the cow is the cow. You're not looking for, in Gelu system, you're not looking for a cow. You're looking for an inherently existent cow. So they have different forms of analysis, right? So they come up with the idea that there's nothing inherently existent, right, You can't find the inherently existent cow. So what you've negated is the inherently existent cow. You haven't negated cow, right? This is for Galu. You're not looking for a cow. You're looking for inherently existent cow, and you can't find it. So that's your negation. You haven't touched cow at all. Cow's eating grass, carrying on with its own life. You haven't destroyed cow. In the other systems, they come at it a little bit more. When you hear about Ranton and Shinton, self-emptiness and other emptiness, it's a little bit. When they start to analyze the nature of mind, the thing that non-affirming and negative means you get rid of everything, and there's nothing else which is established, right? That's the crucial bit. You don't establish any phenomena, you just refute. It's only refutation. There's nothing which is, from your analysis and investigation, you don't establish anything. But for the sort of, Dzogchen Mahamudra tradition, they're going to say that this nature of mind is luminosity. Right? It's particularly related to the mind.
And that's an affirmation.
Which is a positive phenomenon. Yeah. The nature of mind. So they will go with this freedom from the four extremes, as I mentioned, the extreme of existence, the extreme of non-existence, both and neither. And they're going to come at it from that level. So they're saying that sort of Galu-style system is only refuting the first extreme, existence. And not, so the lack of truly existing, not truly existing. Okay? That's the first one. But they're saying there's a deeper level to this where you go beyond sort of all conceptual frameworks and sort of kind of what they call it tenzin, which is the clinging to some kind of characteristic of something. And they say that if you don't go through this process of the four extremes, you can't get rid of that, and you will still be clinging on, even if you've understood the lack of true existence of something. So but they also want to preserve the idea that the mind is luminous, and that is for them the ultimate truth, I think. So they have two versions of ultimate truth, I think: emptiness, beyond the four extremes, and the luminous nature of mind. So that's a positive phenomenon. The luminous nature of mind is a positive. The words in Tibetan don't really translate very well. It's called truba, which just means it's like, yeah. Yeah, an affirmation, yeah. There's not a negation. There's an affirmative. That's to affirm something, right?
Is the purified luminous mind is a purified mind?
Yeah.
But it's also empty of existence.
Yes.
That also empty of existence.
But the mind itself for Galu is not the ultimate truth. Even the Buddha's mind is not ultimate truth for Galu.
The Buddha's mind is also
empty of inherent existence, but it's not the ultimate truth. So this is where you see that they're sort of going to say to you, the Kajun Nyingma style is going to say to you the luminous nature of mind. So when we talk about Buddha nature, right? For Galu, Buddha nature is the emptiness of. You can, for us, our Buddha nature is the emptiness of our contaminated mind. That's the seed. For the Kachun Nyingma, it's the luminous nature of mind. That's Buddha nature. So, we're talking about the ultimate level of experience, right, of the subtlest phenomena.
Connected with Yogacara, Krishnamatra, in some way?
In a little bit, in the way that Yogacara is going to, what Yogacara does is to a little bit cling on to some kind of what's the word? Primacy of mind.
Or they say it's truth.
Well, yeah, try finding that statement in what are called Chittamata texts. You probably won't find it. It's attributed to them, yeah.
Could you expand on primacy of mind?
So they want to give a sort of strong importance to that aspect of experience or something. The mind itself has some kind of primal importance.
Okay.
Something like that.
You didn't say it, right? That's good.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated. So they, in Yogacara, which Shantarakshita blends Yogacara with Madhyamaka, in Yogacara, they got more of this aspect of, and that was really that's a philosophically useful aspect to take into Dzogchen and Mahamudra, where you're meditating on nature of mind, but essentially nature of mind. Going through of course the processes are very complex for those systems. They're very complex systems, but the luminosity is key. They want this luminous nature of mind, So the mind lacking true existence is not really the highest truth for them. That's almost like they call it it's the ultimate truth, which is kind of counted in as ultimate truth, but it's not really the ultimate truth. And then they have this, either going beyond the four extremes of existence, non-existence, or luminosity of mind, I think. That's my take on everything. That would be the real ultimate truth.
Is it in Tantra that Gelu says like a fundamental innate clear light mind? That's the luminous mind, it's the same thing?
Fundamental clear light mind. Yeah, it could be, yeah. But, yeah, it could be a little bit like that. But what they're saying is, what is emptiness? What is the ultimate truth? It's the emptiness of that clear light mind. So yes, they're using it. You're using it in Tantra when you dissolve you go through the Timrin, the stages of dissolution. Essentially we die. It's the last moment before death, real death. You're in. If you're a meditator, you remain in that clear light mind, right? And then, when that clear light mind finishes, the body and mind are separate. The consciousness goes on to a new life. The body is left behind at that very subtle, level of tantric practice. But if you still ask them what's the ultimate truth, they won't say clear light nature of mind. They'll say that's a conventional nature of mind for Gelu. They'll say it's emptiness, lacking a true existence of the mind. So there's a little bit different. I'm not super clear. I have to be honest. I'm not super clear how, but I think they will say that the luminous nature of mind is kind of like,
The definition clear and luminous is the conventional nature of mind. It's not
yeah. So yeah.
Clear and,
Clear, yeah. When you debate, they say what's the nature of mind on a conventional level. They say it's clear and knowing, or clear and clear and aware, or something like that. Right? So kind of thing. But there's a huge actual amount of debate about that in terms of how the traditions present what it means to have clarity, what it means to have rigpa, awareness. Rigpa is one of the highest practices in Kachu practice of. In Dzogchen, isn't it? Dzogchen, yeah, rigpa. Rigpa is the primordial awareness. In some cases, they use the terms Ranjung Yeshi, that self-arisen, exalted wisdom. Primordial wisdom is we start to Dene Yeshi, primordial exalted wisdom. So there's so they're also coming in that way a little bit like that idea of Buddha nature. It's there already, and you uncover it, right? Whereas Gelu is coming from the idea that the seed is there, but you don't have Buddha nature. You have your Buddha nature right now is the emptiness of your contaminated mind to Gelu. Whereas the other traditions are saying it's purified, from the, what's it called? Lama, the Sublime Continuum. They have 9 analogies for Buddha nature. And they talk about, like, for instance, a clay statue, a gold Buddha hidden in a clay statue. Or that lovely one of the poor man who has a fortune buried under their house, but they don't know it, right? So they come more from this angle, it's there, but you don't know it. And you reveal it. The sun is always shining. The sun is shining, but the clouds are always there, sort of thing. Whereas, sort of, to talk a little bit grossly about it, the Gulu style idea comes that you purify your afflictions and become a Buddha from that. It's only a seed. It's not the actual thing. So that's how these different perspectives work together. I mean, it's quite complex and yeah. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So what we'll do is do Sutra 3 Jewels, the dedicated to Simon's career.
My career.
I'm serious, long life, and also for those who have passed away.
Yeah.
And hopefully to be continued, in New York City when you're around.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course.
Because we need this kind of thing, but we don't get it. We don't hang out with them ourselves.
No.
We'd like to.
Yeah.
So Sutra
We didn't put the prayers at the beginning.
And we got any names? Good. And there was someone did die those days. I prostrate to the omniscient one. Thus the Buddha, Bhagavad, Tathagata, Arahat, Samyak, Sambuddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans is the Buddha of Bhagavad. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the root of virtue. He is completely unlimited with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him, he is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of Nirvana. He possesses immutable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of Buddha Bhagavats, who arise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in Dhamma. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells in the Bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavad. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies.
The Bhagavad teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma which is taught by the Bhagavad is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy. journey. As for the Sangha of the great Yama, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with joined palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. Here the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in completely pure life.
So thank you very much again and again. I
Thank you.
really appreciate your conversational tone. Without any humility, which I don't understand. Very sweet. No, you know an awful lot. You did a lot of awful things too.
Yes, certainly do.
But, you know, you sweetly described really good teaching. Anytime.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Thank you for all.
Is this book, by the way?
Yeah.
Narrow, because I said, oh, no, we have thousands. I know. So,
No, you're going to keep on.
So it doesn't do any good sitting in the closet for 34 years. It's been a while.
Now is the time.
Things take a long time